On June 25, 2009, the world stopped. The king of pop, the most famous man on earth, was gone. Michael Jackson, whose voice, movement, and mystique had defined generations, was found unresponsive in his Los Angeles mansion. Minutes later, he was pronounced dead. How could Michael Jackson die at the very moment he was preparing to live again? For over 40 years, one man defined the sound, the movement, and the magic of modern music.
Before we meet the man, it's important to know where he came from, for his history is nothing short of incredible.
Michael Jackson wasn't just a performer. He was an event. He rose from the small stage of the Jackson 5 to the biggest stages on earth. Every song, every step electrified audiences in ways no one had ever seen before. He was pure energy, pure rhythm, and the world couldn't look away.
Michael was guarded as much as the president, literally. I mean, he's the most famous man on earth.
In the 1980s, he reached a height few would ever touch.
I remember sitting in a hotel room with him, and it was when Thriller, just before Thriller was about to come out, and he had the Billie Jean, then it was a VHS cassette in those days. He put it on, and it was the Billie Jean video. He said, "What do you think of that?" I said, "Yeah, Michael, yeah, it's all right." It was brilliant.
Thriller became the best-selling album of all time, and Michael Jackson became the king of pop.
Because he created this unbelievable image, that was like not human.
But the brighter the spotlight, the darker the shadows grew. Behind the glittering glove and diamond-studded jackets was a man under siege. Every transformation, from his art to his appearance, became a global headline. The same media that built his throne began to chip away at its base. Allegations, trials, isolation. For Michael, fame was no longer freedom. It was a cage. 50 sold-out shows, a farewell that promised rebirth. For Michael, it would be the greatest comeback in history. He was rehearsing every night, pushing his body to its limits, chasing the perfection that made him legendary. Behind the curtain, there was exhaustion. Behind the cheers, there was fear. The world's brightest star was burning out.
He was not in a good way. He sounded a bit delirious. We had like over an hour-long conversation. Michael sounded like he was drunk, or he was, well, I guess he was drugged, but he just didn't sound right.
Why was a man preparing for 50 concerts already fighting to stay alive?
This is it, and see you in July.
Fire paramedic 33, what is your emergency?
Yes, sir. I need an ambulance as soon as possible, sir. Sir, we have a gentleman here that needs help, and he's not breathing yet. He's not breathing, and we're trying to pump him, but he's not.
Okay. Okay. How old is he?
He's 50 years old, sir.
50. Okay. He's unconscious. He's not breathing.
Yes, he's not breathing, sir.
Okay, and he's not conscious either. He's not breathing.
He's not conscious, sir.
Okay.
It was June the 25th, 2009. Michael was at his home in Los Angeles. Paramedics rushed through the mansion in Holmby Hills. Michael was on the floor, his personal doctor trying to revive him.
And did not get the call about Michael Jackson until our firefighters were already on scene, had notified their supervisors that this was a celebrity and this was indeed Michael Jackson.
He was rushed into an ambulance and it raced towards UCLA Medical Center.
According to a number of reports, including the Los Angeles Times, Michael Jackson was taken to the UCLA Medical Center approximately 2.5 hours ago after paramedics were called to his home in the Holmby Hills.
What's being reported by KTLA, apparently Michael Jackson suffered cardiac arrest this afternoon. He was rushed to UCLA Medical Center.
When they arrived on scene, he was not breathing. They attempted CPR along the route to the hospital, but we have nothing to indicate that along that time they were able to revive him.
According to Randy Jackson, Michael Jackson's brother, Michael Jackson collapsed in his home in West Los Angeles this morning.
This would be Michael's last breath, because at 2:26 p.m., 25th of June, he was pronounced dead.
CNN can now confirm from the LA coroner that Michael Jackson is dead.
Michael Jackson has died.
Tonight, the world has lost a major talent right up there with Elvis Presley himself.
The singer Michael Jackson is reported to have died from a heart attack.
It's really hard to wrap your brain around this, especially since I know people who were literally dealing with his management hours ago, trying to work out, some additional tour dates and some more appearances.
I want them to do a complete congressional investigation, because there's more to this than just what you have read. And I do want to get to the bottom of all of this and what happened to my son.
Inside the UCLA Medical Center, it was chaos, and news cameras had already gathered outside. In seconds, every network, every phone, every screen lit up. The biggest pop star on earth becomes breaking news. Crowds poured into the streets. Tears, disbelief, hysteria. But beneath the chaos, questions echoed. But no one asked how and what happened. No one was ready to ask why. Within minutes, the world was on fire. Tweets, texts, and headlines moved faster than grief. Social media sites like Twitter was failing. Michael made up 15% of all posts at that time. The king of pop is gone, and no one knew what to believe. Outside UCLA Medical Center, helicopters circle and cameras swarm. Every second of tragedy was broadcasted live. The internet crashed. Search engines melted under his name. Newsrooms scrambled for footage, speculation, and blame.
That's what we're trying to find out. Who's behind all of this? Why? What the purpose of it? And we will find it.
You mean other doctors?
It's not just doctors. It's everybody associated with Michael. Yeah, and we're trying to find out what that says.
Within hours, the investigation began.
Doing investigation into Mr. Jackson's death, not any other patient.
Police sealed the mansion. The scene was described as a mess by the police. The mansion was littered in pill bottles. Notes were scattered along with IV tubes. It was as though Michael's life was one sustained by medicine. His death created questions that needed to be answered. In 1984, at the height of his fame, Michael was filming a Pepsi commercial. It was a celebration of his global power. Then, in a split second, he caught fire. A pyrotechnic misfire set his hair ablaze, giving him second and third degree burns across his scalp.
I think that's possibly when Michael turned to taking the sleeping sedative drugs that he was obviously lastly killed him.
The pain for Michael was unimaginable. Doctors prescribed opioids to keep him performing, to keep the machine running. It worked, up until it didn't. That day didn't just scar his body. It opened a door to dependence that would shadow him for the rest of his life. Detectives asked the first question, what killed him? The second question was, who let it happen? Toxicology reports confirmed the cause of death was propofol, a powerful anesthetic meant for hospitals.
It's ignorance that people do not understand. It was a crime of negligence. He loved Michael.
At the center of it all, Dr. Conrad Murray, the man hired to keep Michael alive.
Okay, what medications were you taking in about
January of 2003.
Could have easily been pain medication because I had some serious injuries on tour.
Before Conrad Murray, Michael had another doctor in his life called Dr. Arnold Klein. He was known as the dermatologist for the stars, and him and Michael became good friends.
And I would give him, I would say I would take an hour and a half to inject him. And I would do somewhere around, well over 100 facial injections on him.
As time went on, the doctors in his life were always there. There wasn't a time where there wasn't a doctor present. So that was just something I imagined that he felt he needed to have because he's Michael Jackson, and he used to refer to his body as like a machine. I think it's a well-oiled machine. If it's not in working order, then this whole business doesn't run, this whole organization doesn't run. So that's how he used to justify the doctors being there, because we used to question it all the time. It used to bug us. And they had the biggest influence over him because they're doctors. He felt whatever he said to them would be kept in secret, So.
Klein wasn't just a dermatologist. To Michael, he became a lifeline. Someone treated the pain he'd been carrying since the Pepsi incident. The surgeries, the stress, the relentless pressure to stay Michael Jackson.
If you prepare yourself and get ready for it, and make sure that you get the correct off days, you can do it. And he was going to make sure that took place.
At first, it was medical. Burns, lupus flare-ups. They were real pain, real treatment. But somewhere along the way, the lines shifted. Michael started visiting Klein's office more and more, walking in exhausted and walking out sedated. Demerol became the drug he relied on, an opioid Klein administered often, sometimes too often. And every time Michael needed a break from the world, Klein had something that could take the edge off. This wasn't a one-off mistake. It became a pattern. Michael leaning on medication to get through the day, and Klein making it available. Michael wasn't just dealing with rehearsals. He was dealing with withdrawal, tolerance, and years of dependency. But the medical records, the frequency of the visits, the amount of medication involved, none of it points to a man who is being protected.
Have you formed an opinion about whether or not by May 4th, or at least, or even earlier, that Michael Jackson was dependent on Demerol?
Yes, I believe there's evidence that he was dependent upon Demerol.
It points to someone who wasn't being told no. Michael trusted Dr. Klein, maybe too much. And that trust helped shape the fragile state he was in when the world saw him last.
He was looking for this for sleep, and he trusted whoever administered these things to him. He trusted them.
He had a lot of people around him that were yes men and would do whatever he wanted or however it is to be, but their main goals were to take care of themselves. And I feel that there was people who didn't take care of him properly.
50 sold-out shows, millions on the line. He was a man terrified to fail.
I wasn't concerned because we know what it takes to put on a production like that, and the time and the energy that you got to put into putting on a production like that. But we've done it before. He's done it before, so.
I didn't know about the prescription drugs, but I did know that he had certain physical things that he was dealing with,
The case exploded, and the doctor becomes the headline. This wasn't just about one bad decision. It was about years of dependency. They needed him awake, moving, smiling, even when he was barely standing. A death caused by recklessness, fueled by expectation. But why was Michael depending on surgical drugs to sleep? 2 years after Michael's death, on September 27, 2011, the trial begins.
I'll tell the media nothing because they...
Over 2 million people would be turning in to watch the trial. The world watched one man take the stand. The prosecution called it criminal negligence, whilst the defense called it a tragedy.
How do you plead?
Your Honor, I am an innocent man. I therefore plead not guilty.
Thank you.
For nearly 3 months, testimony spills out, text messages, phone records, timelines.
When you believe my hero, I want to say, I never seen nothing like this in my life.
They showed how many bottles of propofol was given to Michael, each one another glimpse into the chaos behind the curtain.
That misplaced trust in the hands of Conrad Murray cost Michael Jackson his life.
Everyone had something to lose, and no one had the courage to stop it.
We, the jury in the above entitled action, find the defendant, Conrad Robert Murray, guilty of the crime of involuntary manslaughter.
Dr. Conrad Murray was sentenced to 4 years in prison. Justice, they said, had been served. Outside the courthouse, fans chanted and cried, but inside, lawyers closed their files. Michael's death wasn't just a medical failure, it was cultural addiction. The trial ended and the cameras moved on, but the story hadn't finished unraveling. The truth wasn't just in the courtroom. It was in the contracts, the exhaustion, the silence that surrounded him. Murray took the fall. The verdict should have felt like a weight lifted from the world's shoulders, but it didn't.
They're trying to say he's to blame, but there's more behind this than just Dr. Murray.
When the trial ended, silence should have followed. But silence didn't sell. The same media that chased his scandals now called him a saint, and the same tabloids that mocked his face now praised his genius. Michael became the version of himself the world wanted all along. Fans filled streets from Tokyo to Rio, and murals rose overnight. Grief had turned into a global chorus. There was something uneasy, because while the world celebrated the icon, few dared to look at the cost of creating him.
The public need to open their minds a little bit to see that this man is a genuine guy, and you don't just wake up one day in Gary, Indiana and become the most successful man on earth and become a billionaire.
Executives re-released albums. Networks replayed scandals. People were rewriting him in real time, smoothing the rough edges, editing out the pain.
I think there's a huge stigma attached to anybody who's a little bit different than someone else. Maybe if they're gay, if they're a superstar, if they're not married. Now, if Michael was hanging around those children and he had his wife with him at the time, no one would be questioning it, you know? If he wasn't a superstar, no one would be questioning it. Maybe if he wasn't a black man who so happened to have a skin disease that turned him white, you won't question it. The surgery is another thing people may think's odd. They might not question it too.
He wasn't complicated anymore. He was perfect, marketable, and safe. That's the revelation. Michael Jackson didn't simply die. He was reborn as a product of our need for perfection.
Closure, I don't know, but it would help understand what took place. But closure, I don't think that's something hard to fathom.
Maybe that's why the world clung to him after he was gone, because the myth could never disappoint, never age, never break again. In death, he found the peace fame never gave him, and in our grief, we found comfort in illusion.
It is now hoped that the verdict will end the whole culture of celebrity doctors in Hollywood, for it's clear that some were operating outside of acceptable ethical standards.
In the weeks after his death, the noise finally slowed. The cameras pulled back, and what was left was grief. Millions stood outside theaters, homes, and hospitals, holding candles for a man they never met. For some, he was childhood. For others, proof that magic was real. For all, he was gone too soon.
It's sad to say that Michael Jackson died. But Michael Jackson killed Michael Jackson.
Maybe because we asked too much of him, or of the idea that one person could carry the weight of the world's dreams and survive it.
I think he is simply the greatest entertainer that ever lived.